Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for joining me for another video. So this video is really just going to be showing you guys the raised garden beds we put on the side of our house. We've been wanting raised garden beds in our yard since we've owned a house. We wanted to put one in our old house lawn, but we just didn't really have good adequate space where we got good direct sunlight for a long period of time. But when we moved into this house, we realized that we had a really good opportunity in a few different areas to put our raised garden bed. So before I get into this video, I wanted to just say this is not a how-to video. I'm not going to give a very detailed explanation of how we did everything. I will just kind of touch on some of the basic things we did and overlay some of the footage that I recorded while making these things. If you really want a detailed description of how we made these composite deck raised garden beds, go to the channel called I Like to Make Stuff. Bob does an excellent job at explaining how exactly he made his raised garden beds, and I kind of took that and adapted it to our situation here because he was building his on flat ground. We were building ours on a slope, so we kind of had to terrace ours a little bit. But at the very minimum, hopefully this video can give you some ideas on how to make your own raised garden beds. So when we were deciding where we wanted to put our raised garden beds in this new lawn, we talked about doing them in our backyard, and we also talked about doing it on the south side of our house. The backyard was a good idea. It does get a lot of direct sunlight, but at the same time there's also just a lot of future things we want to do, maybe put a patio in, an extended patio with a fire pit and those types of things. So we didn't really want to take up more lawn space for a raised garden bed in that area. So we decided on the south side of our house because it does get plenty of sunlight. It easily gets 8 hours of direct sunlight a day. This area already needed to be renovated. In fact, in one of my earlier videos when we first moved into this house, I talked about this area and potentially seeding it in the spring just to get some covering on the ground because it's been bare dirt since we moved into the house. The other reason why we chose this area is it's got great access to irrigation. There's literally a spigot right next to our raised garden bed, so that's going to be perfect whenever I install a soaker hose irrigation system for these raised garden beds. Now I'm not going to be planting grass in this area anymore. That was an initial thought I had for this area, is to put grass seed and try to get it to fill in. But considering it's just a very narrow area of the lawn between the house and fence, it just wasn't ideal to plant grass there. It's not going to be easy to mow and those types of things. So we're essentially going to be filling this area in with rock and be putting stepping stones for a path to walk through this area. And it's just going to kind of be, you know, just a rock garden bed, if you want to call it that. So since we chose the south side of our house, this section of the lawn is a little sloped. It's nothing like the beast at our old house, but it is a little bit sloped. So we wanted to make the garden beds terraced, and with that, we can either do that two different ways. We can either dig it into the hill or put the garden beds basically on top of the hill, and that's the option I chose to do. I didn't want to have to cut into the hill and the garden beds start acting as a retaining wall to retain the soil within the hill itself. I just wanted the garden beds to sit on top of the hill, so that essentially the raised garden beds are only holding in the soil within the raised garden bed. Now, like I said, this area needed to be renovated. There is no grass growing here. There is a huge evergreen bush that was overgrown, and that's exactly where we chose to put the garden beds up next to the house. So these are entirely made out of composite decking as well as aluminum angle. I did get all my material from Menards, and it kind of worked out pretty nice because we were making raised garden beds that were 4 feet by 4 feet. And it's just so happened that when I went to Menards to pick up the materials, they had scrap pieces of composite decking that were actually in 4-piece lengths, but I did still have to buy several 8-foot lengths of the actual composite decking we wanted the garden beds to look like. The scrap pieces I purchased from Menards, they weren't the same color of the rest of the bed, so we put those scrap pieces on the side that faces the house so you don't ever see those anyway. The aluminum angle might be 1.5 by 1.5, but I would probably recommend going with 2 inch by 2 inch just to give you more area and surface to nail or screw the decking boards to. So these raised garden beds were 4 feet by 4 feet, and the first thing I did was cut the aluminum angle for all 4 corners to the length they needed to be. Then I cut the bottom portion of those to the actual spike because those are going to be going into the ground to hold everything in place. Once I had those cut, I started assembling the box upside down and putting the composite planks in and basically building up the sides to the depth they needed to be. When I connected the planks on the corners, I believe it's called a butt joint, and then I staggered that just to increase the strength of that corner. Before screwing any of the decking boards into the actual angled aluminum, I did pre-drill into the angled aluminum and the decking itself just to make that screw go in a lot easier. Now, with this being terraced and there being an angle that we're gonna have to cut on the sides, In general, I would suggest drawing out your plan so you kind of know the dimensions and exactly how you need to cut things. That will help your whole building process immensely, because when we did that, that helped us basically cut that angle on the sides where it's going up the hill, and it just helped the whole process overall. So once I finished assembling these boxes, I've realized they were extremely heavy, but they were also very sturdy. You're going to need some help carrying these to their location, and luckily my wife was able to help me carry these and place them right where they needed to go. Prior to putting them in the ground though, I did dig a small trench of the outline of where the boxes were going to go, because I did want some of the garden bed to actually sit down in the ground. Once each box was put in the ground, I used additional aluminum angle in the middle of each wall of the raised garden bed. This aluminum angle I believe was a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. It wasn't nearly as wide as the other stuff, but this just gave extra rigidity and strength to the sides of those walls. Once the boxes were in the ground, I stapled landscape fabric on the inside walls of each box. Then I started backfilling the bottom portions of each box with all the extra soil that I got from our front landscape project when I was cutting all those live edges. I took all that soil to initially fill in the bottom of the boxes until I had about 6 to 7 inches left to fill. So to fill in the last 7 inches of each box, I did a mixture of 50% topsoil, 25% composted cow manure, and then 25% of mushroom compost or composted mushrooms. This was just a ratio that I kind of did some brief research on and learned from other gardening YouTubers. Specifically, I got this ratio I think from a YouTube channel called Epic Gardening. They recommended a 50% soil, 25% composted material, and then another additional 25% of a different composted material. And then to top it off, I'd use grass clippings as a mulch to help retain moisture and keep weed seeds out. Now at this point in time in the year when we put these garden beds in, we weren't really anticipating being able to plant all that much, given it's the heat of the summer, it's late to plant. But when I was getting the materials from Menards building these, I was able to find some really cheap tomato plants that were already somewhat matured. They were only like $1.50 a piece. I got 6 of those, planted those in the ground. Those are actually doing really well. We're seeing some buds, so we may get some fruit. We also propagated some green onions that we got from the grocery store. Those are actually in the raised garden beds as well and doing pretty well. But again, this year we're not really hoping to get all that much fruit from the raised garden beds. We wanted to just get this built and established for next spring. So that's really it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this was somewhat educational. Maybe you guys got some tips and tricks for your own raised garden beds if you're planning on doing one in your lawn. So I'm really excited about getting this started and getting going on this and learning a whole lot. My wife and I don't really know much of anything about gardening, so it's just going to be a fun thing to learn together, and more importantly, a fun thing to do with our kids. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you like my content. Give me a thumbs up for this video if you like this video, and if you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comment section below. As always, I'm Ben the Lawn Guardian, and I'll see you in the next video.